connection with our kids doesn't have to be complicated and it doesn't have to be time consuming. It is really quality over quantity, and it just has to be intentional. This is Bold Intentional Life, the podcast for moms who are ready to stop sleepwalking through life. Hi, I'm your host, Jessie Larson, and I know how easy it is to get caught up in the daily grind, running on autopilot, feeling overwhelmed, and wondering if this is all there is. But here, we're about taking back control, realigning with what matters most, and making every moment count. You deserve more than just going through the motions. It's time to step into a life of purpose, balance, and fulfillment, one small, impactful change at a time. Each week, we'll dive into real talk, practical tips, and empowering conversations to help you shift from just getting by to fully showing up for yourself, your family, and your dreams. No more waiting. Your bold, intentional life starts now. Welcome back to Bold Intentional Life. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're diving into a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that is intentionally connecting with our kids. So it's the month of February. It's the month of Valentine's, of love, of our relationships and connections. And last week on the podcast, we talked about how to make date nights happen, how to be intentional with your date nights and with your main relationship with your spouse and your partner. And today I want to talk about the connections that we have with our kids, because those are so important. If you've ever felt like your interactions with your kids are limited to logistics, like what time practice is, what homework is due, what needs to be done, what chores you need help with, all of those things, you're not alone. Life is really busy. And as moms, we manage a lot of things. It's easy to slip into those kind of surface level conversations and kind of like managerial interactions, especially as our kids get older. I've noticed as my older two are getting more into the teenage years that it is so easy to slip into managing them instead of connecting with them. And they need more. Those kids need connection. They need to feel truly seen. They need to feel heard, and they need to feel valued. So today I want to talk about how we do that and give some simple, realistic, and really fun ways to build deeper connections with your kids without adding pressure to yourself, without adding that guilt of, oh my gosh, I need to be doing this, without adding to your already full mental load. Let's dive into this a little bit more and talk about why intentional connection matters. We all want strong relationships with our kids. We want them to come to us when they're struggling. We want them to trust us. We want them to feel safe with us. But that type of trust and connection doesn't just happen. It's built through the small, intentional moments of everyday life. And the research, of course, I went to the research. The research backs this up. There was a study from the University of Cambridge that found that children who share a warm and loving bond with their parents at the age of 3 are more likely to exhibit socially desirable traits like kindness and empathy during adolescence. So this means that those small, consistent things that you're doing when they're little and the ways you're connecting with them when they're little have lasting impact on their emotional and social development. But it doesn't mean that we stop now. We continue that going. And it's why I'm so passionate about how we are connecting with our kids, how we are treating them, how we're talking to them. And it's a big part, just a little caveat here, of why I created with my friend Camille 5-minute meditations for kids. That is a great way to connect with your kids, to listen to those together, to give them more tools and just things in their toolbox, more mental health things and more ways to build those desirable traits in them. So just a little caveat of like, I'm super passionate about our kids and about helping them, and especially about helping them to feel seen and loved and heard and valued. It is so, so, so important. So just know that this episode is completely coming from the bottom of my heart. I am crazy, crazy, crazy passionate about this. But how do we make it happen when life is already so hectic and crazy and now we're feeling this added pressure? I hope that whenever you listen to this podcast, it's never putting added pressure on you. It's actually giving you those little tiny shifts that you can take, that little tiny step. And we'll end this episode today with just a simple action that you can take, not a total overhaul and not a huge to-do list and more on your plate. Because I get it. Okay. I get it. If you're a mom, I get it. I don't have to tell you that the mental load is so real between everything that we have going on, the schedules and the managing that and the drive times and like the reverse math when you're trying to make sure that you get to where you need to be on time, the meal planning and the grocery shopping, the appointments, the school, the homework, the making all of the things. And then if you're working inside of the home or outside of the home, there's a lot going on. So I get it. I get why deep connection sometimes gets pushed to the I'll get to it or I'll do it later category. And we think, yeah, I'll plan a date night with my kids or I'll plan a one-on-one thing. And later sometimes happens and sometimes it doesn't. And it keeps getting pushed. And it's easy to get into that pattern. That's something that I want to be aware of because I've had those intentions where I've thought I want to plan intentional date nights with my kids. And then suddenly 3 months goes by or 4 months goes by and I haven't done one because things keep getting in the way. And that's why I like these small little shifts instead of the big things. Yes, if you want to do big, huge date nights and grand things with your kids, definitely still do those. But I think making the small interactions more of a focal point in our mind is going to make sure that those don't slip, that our kids and our connection with them doesn't slip through the cracks. There's another pattern that I want to kind of bring awareness to. And it's the pattern of slipping into those interactions where our only interactions with our kids are about checking up on them and monitoring them and managing them. It's about checking grades, reminding them of their responsibilities, managing expectations. I have to catch myself in this all the time where I have to pause and think, have I connected with my kid or have I just been on them about grades or on them about XYZ? And really stopping to pause. I had to do that today, honestly. And it's hard. I try to put myself back in that spot of being a kid and being a teen and how I felt when I felt just monitored and managed rather than being connected with. There was a study done by the Society of Personality and Social Psychology that shows that parental affection leads to children being emotionally happier and less anxious. So this means that the way we engage with our kids, whether it's through loving, intentional connection or constant correction and nagging, has a profound impact on their emotional well-being. So how do we shift then if you're catching this, if you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, you're right. I am just managing. I am managing my kids, not momming my kids, right? How do we shift from that to actually connecting with them? So I've got some fun strategies to dive into and some fun actionable ways that you can make connection a very natural part of your day. The first thing that I like is conversation starters. Conversation starters that go beyond, how was your day? You've ever been in the car, you pick your kids up from school and you're like, how was your day? And you get the response, it was fine, or it was good, or whatever, right? You get like a one-word answer and you're like, great, cool. Tried to connect with my kids. I guess we'll check that box off, and they don't give you anything. So instead of like answer questions where they can just answer like a one word, try for more open-ended questions or just different, like ones that spark a little bit more curiosity. So instead of just like, hey, how was school today? My go-tos are sometimes I go for like different emotions. Like I said, hey, was there anything that made you laugh today? Or was there something silly that happened? And I'll change this around for the ages of my kids too, right? Sometimes I'll ask them, did you help anybody today? Was there anybody that needed help? Um, was there anything super crazy that happened today? And I will get more answers and more insight to how my kids' day actually went. You know, sometimes they'll tell me the answer I got the other day, hey, did something crazy happen today? And my kid was like, yes, there was this group of kids that threw an eraser at this girl and he got expelled. And there was a whole thing, right? And I got a lot more insight into this. I was like, was that in your class or did you hear about it? And where did you hear about it? Where were these conversations happening, right? And I get to have a much bigger picture painted for me, a much more vibrant picture painted for me about my child's day at school instead of just like, it was good, it was fine. So just getting a little bit more like fun and interesting with the questions that you're asking them. I also like going with some personalized questions when I'm trying to connect with them about the things that they're interested in. And this can be kind of hard sometimes if you know nothing about the things that they are into. Right now, my boys are kind of really into martial arts, UFC fighting. My youngest is really into WWE wrestling. And it's like, how am I going to connect with them on that? This is where you guys know, you might know this is coming, where I go to AI. I have loved ChatGPT lately for solving so many of my life issues and problems. I call it my brainstorm bestie because it really just helps me when I need to brain dump and bring some structure to what's going on in my crazy brain. And so I did this even with my kids. I gave ChatGPT the prompt. I said, I want to connect better with my kids. Can you please give me some conversation starters, questions, or fun facts I can share with them based on their interests? It responded back to me. I'd love to help with that. Tell me more about your kids' interests, ages, or specific topics that they're into right now. So I gave him, I said, my boy is 9 years old. He's into this. My other one is 12. She's into this, yada, yada, yada. And it spit out a bunch of conversation starters, a couple of questions, and some fun facts, which I really loved. For my son, it was like, did you know that a soccer ball has 32 panels and was originally designed and all of these things, right? And so when I'm with them next time, I can just say like, hey, did you know this? And then that will spark something and maybe they know something, or then we can talk more about soccer or whatever they're into. Or I can ask them like a question, like if you were a famous soccer player, would you rather be known for being the fastest or for having the most powerful kick or something like that, right? Where you're just getting a little bit more creative with the ways that you are connecting and asking with your kids. But I love going to ChatGPT to kind of help me with that and get me brainstorming, get me thinking of fun things. Me and my husband actually did a really funny one time where we told ChatGPT that we wanted to connect with our teenager using Gen Z and Gen Alpha slang words. And it was hilarious. My 14-year-old rolled his eyes in the back of his head so dang hard when we tried to talk to him with these like Gen Z slang terms that it gave us, but it was so funny. And even now he'll talk to us sometimes, be like, did you get this from ChatGPT? And it's just been a funny way to connect. So there you go. There is a fun way to kind of switch up your conversations and your conversation starters. My next tip is using car time wisely. I was joking the other day, my mom called me and it was after school and she said, are you in the car? And I said, it's after school. I'm in the car. My kids have a lot of activities and sports and things that they're into. And so we're in the car a lot with them. And this time can be used so wisely. Sometimes I've got all of them. Sometimes it's one-on-one time. And we can really make this count. I didn't know that years ago when my husband was driving my daughter to and from soccer that they listened to the Moana soundtrack over and over and over again. And it became this big thing. And so when Moana 2 came out, they were like, we're going to see this. And they made it this daddy-daughter day and they went to see Moana together and it was a whole thing. And that started with just using car time intentionally and him giving her the reins to pick the music. That's also a fun one. You pick the music, you be the DJ, and you get to learn a little bit about them. Like, where did this music come from? Fun fact about that is my 14-year-old is really into Eminem right now. And if you would have told me when I was a teenager listening to Eminem that one day I would be bonding with my son listening to Eminem, I would have laughed at you. But that's been really fun. So music is a great way in the car to connect with your kids as well. Okay, the next one is just being really mindful of mini one-on-one moments. Sometimes I'll pull a kid in to just help me mix up dinner or whatever, or they think that I'm just asking them to come in and help me unload the dishwasher, but really I want to connect and talk with them. There's little tiny moments throughout our day where we can have just these little mini one-on-one moments. And if we just put our mindset in if we just kind of shift into that mindset of, I want to connect with my kids. It's why I talk about intentions. It's why I talk about mindset so often, because just that shift alone helps our brains look for those opportunities. So at the beginning of the week, if you think to yourself, hey, this week, I really want to connect with my kids, those little moments will start revealing themselves to you. You'll start thinking like, oh, I have to run down to the gas station. I'm going to grab so-and-so to go with me. Or, hey, I'm folding laundry right now. I'm going to grab so-and-so to come with me. I mean, this is a win-win-win because you're getting help with a chore and you're connecting with your kids. So that works too. But just kind of looking for those little tiny things that you can do. So whether it's reading together, whether it's making a snack together, or just sitting on their bed and chatting. Sometimes I'll just walk in. It weirds my kids out sometimes. I'll just walk into the room, give them a knock, walk in, say, hey, how are you doing? And just shut the door and they're like, good. What's going on? And nothing, just wanted to see how you are, wanted to chat, and I'll just sit for a couple of minutes. And then, as soon as we're done, walk out and just an intentional thing. It makes them feel important that you took time out of your day to just pause and be with them. And it doesn't take a lot of time. The other biggest thing is just turning this into a culture, that you have a family culture of connection. And just even saying that, or putting that as an affirmation on your phone, or writing it on a mirror or a Post-it note or something. We are building a family culture of connection. Again, that's going to help your brain look for those opportunities. That's even just the shift you need. You don't even have to take an action step other than putting that in the front of your mind or writing it down somewhere. I'm creating a family culture of connection. Done. That is literally all you have to do after this to start making a little tiny pivot, and the ripple effects of just that mindset shift will have profound impact on your family. I promise. It is amazing the power of our mind and the power of just an intention does. Okay. After that little caveat, I want to add in how much the power of humor has in connection and the power of laughter. Humor is a fantastic tool for building bonds with our kids. There was another study that suggested that humor can strengthen parent-child relationships and enhance the effectiveness of parenting strategies, which is awesome. In our family, we love to laugh together. We will share funny reels. It's actually kind of funny. Me and my husband will send them to each other so that they're saved in our phone with the thing of like, show this to Annabelle or show this to Liam. We have a stack of dad joke cards that we got that are so stupid and so dumb, but my 9-year-old loves them and thinks they're hilarious. And so that's a fun way to connect. And we really love having some hilarious inside jokes in our family, which, as I'm thinking about some of them, a lot of them are at my expense. It's okay. This past weekend, we were staying at an Airbnb and there was this Nespresso machine. Now, I've never used an espresso machine, but I was really excited. I was like, sweet, I'm going to have some Nespresso. Could not for the life of me get this Nespresso machine to work. So if you know how to work an espresso machine and you're like, Jess, this is what you need to do, DM me and let me know. But I followed the directions. I Googled it. I watched TikToks on it. The machine would not work, whatever. And my kids thought that this was the funniest thing, that I could not figure out this machine. And so they started singing the song Espresso, that Sabrina Carpenter song. And they started like making up new lyrics to it, singing, Mom can't have Nespresso. And it was ridiculous. And it became like our whole weekend about how I couldn't have Nespresso because I couldn't get it working. And that's carried on. And it's just funny. And there's little things like that all throughout our family where there's just these little things, but it's an anchor to a memory or to something funny. And it just turns into some memorable connection points. So finding ways to laugh with your kids, whether it's at your expense or through jokes or funny stories or just some shared humorous experiences, showing your kids new funny movies that you watched as when you were a kid or whatever, all of those things create lasting bonds and help to make our daily interactions with our kids more enjoyable. So let's talk about how to actually make sure that these moments happen, again, without adding to your mental load and your to-do list. So I talked about just having that mindset shift, just having that intention at the forefront of your mind of connection is important. I want to connect with my kids. I want to make sure I'm connecting with my kids. Just having that intention going to make a big, huge difference. There's a couple other really tangible things that you can do to help you with that as well. Number one is setting phone reminders with some prompts. Or I know I have a mentor who said for years and years and years, she put her phone on do not disturb from the second her kids got home for that first hour and used that first hour to really connect with them. So she had a phone reminder that went off that said, turn your phone on do not disturb and connect with your kids, right? It's kind of funny to think like, oh, I need my phone to tell me this, but we have reminders on our phones for everything else. Just a quick little alert to say, hey, check out of everything else, check into your kids. The next one is having a cheat sheet of go-to questions. So like I said before, you can grab those from ChatGPT if you want, or you can Google them. Pinterest has a ton. There's tons of conversation starters for kids. I also have put together an entire list of 100 conversation starters for your kids and your family to be able to connect. So if you want that, it is down in the show notes below. You can go ahead and grab that. You can also click over to my website, jessielarson.com/podcast. Head into this episode. It's also linked in the show notes below. You can just click there, get the download, and 100 conversation starters are headed your way. I put in some funny conversation starters, some deep questions, things to get them talking about their friends, things to get them talking about the future, some deeper ones, some to connect in the car, some to connect over dinner. There's a bunch. There's 100. There's 100 conversation starters in there for you. And what's really fun about these is they're quick and easy to go to. So literally just screenshot it, save it on your phone, pull it up, have a couple ready to go in your back pocket. But so often these conversation starters spark conversations. I've used these with Connor, with my husband before, where we'll just pick something and it goes off into these deeper conversations that I wasn't even planning on from a silly question. So sometimes you look at these and think, that's a weird question or that's a dumb question. But it sparks, it just starts that's why it's called a conversation starter, right? It's not just a one thing and I want the answer to this. It's where you start and then dive in and flow and see where those little clues that your kids are giving you, where they go, and dive deeper with them. So once again, I have that resource for you. Just click down into the show notes. Go ahead and grab those 100 conversation starters. And then if you want to get a little bit more personal, I really liked using ChatGPT because it helped me personalize them. You could put in as much information as you want to give it things to spit back out to you to get it really, really personalized. And then as they give you answers, use those to go and get more questions, right? So if I asked ChatGPT about something UFC related and learned that the very first UFC event was in 1993, and then they can tell me like, oh yeah, I remember this, or oh, my favorite fighter is this. Then I can go to ChatGPT and say, hey, my kid's favorite fighter is this. Can you give me a fun fact about them? The next time I interact with them, I can say, hey, did you know this about so-and-so? And then they're like, well, that's cool. My mom knows this and my mom knows I'm interested in it. And they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel valued. And it was a really, really really simple thing that you could do to do that. All right. The next one is creating just anchor points. I know sometimes at the end of the day when it's bedtime, I'm so done. I joke with my kids all the time that after 8:30 they don't have a mother. And it's just a joke, but I'm like, listen, I'm clocking out. This is my job. I'm done. And so sometimes those end of day ones can be hard for me. So finding when you've got the energy to connect with your kids, to be intentional. If it's like, hey, at the end of the night, you can envision this perfect end of night routine where you're like, we do bath time and get them all ready. And then we do a bedtime story and then we cuddle, but you never seem to do that because by the end of the night, you're exhausted and you're like, just get in your bed and go to bed. Then that's not the time to do your check-ins, right? That's not your time to do your connections. Find a different, better time and play around with it. Maybe it's mornings. Maybe it is bedtimes. Maybe that works really well for you. Maybe it's being intentional in the car, like we talked about earlier. But just creating kind of like a go-to that this is the time I connect with my kids. And then just creating habits and habit stacking to make those connections second nature. Honestly, something as simple as I give my kid a hug every morning, or after school when they walk in, I make sure I give them a hug. There is so much science around touch and hugs and how much our kids need them that that can be such a simple action step to take of I'm just going to make sure that I hug my kids today. And that might seem weird, but especially as they get older, like if you've just got little kids, you're like, that's weird. You wouldn't hug your kids. But as soon as they're bigger and they're out and about and they've got things going on, I can stop and think to myself, like, did I hug them? And sometimes it's sad for me to think, oh crap, I don't think I have. Like, so just getting that again to the forefront of my brain, I'm going to make sure I give my kids hugs today or every single day this week. So here's what I want you to take away. I want you to take away from this that connection with our kids doesn't have to be complicated and it doesn't have to be time consuming. It is really quality over quantity and it just has to be intentional. So start small, start with just making the intention and then maybe pick one strategy and implement it this week. I really want you to remember that our kids don't need us to be perfect parents. Your kids do not need you to be perfect. So dump that off, get that off, that weight off your shoulder. You don't have to be perfect. Our kids just need us to show up. They just need us to show up and show up consistently and with love and with presence. And it doesn't take much. It just takes that intention and a little bit of action to do that. So I hope you got something from this. I'm so curious. What was like an aha moment? What was a strategy that you're like, oh my gosh, I never thought to do that? Let me know. Come over onto Instagram and chat with me in the DMs. You know, I love talking over there. Or you can hit reply to any email that I send over to your inbox. I like chatting in email as well. If you liked this episode, I would love it if you would share it with a friend who needs this reminder, who you're like, yes, you need this. Let's connect with our kids. And if you love this podcast, please leave a review if you have not yet. It really, really helps us to connect with more moms and more parents who are looking to be more intentional in their life too. So thanks for being here. That is it for this week. And I'll see you next time on Bold Intentional Life.